all. It's nice to see everyone this morning. We had a lovely dinner last night at the Smokehouse. I think we were definitely well fed and had great conversation, and so it's nice to be starting the meeting again this morning. Welcome to the Dental Board of California quarterly meeting. Today is February 9th, 2018. I need to ask all of us to please turn ourselves on to a silent, polite, and make sure they're off the table so we can avoid feedback noise. You may notice board members accessing their laptops during the meeting. They are using the laptops solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak to that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic, and if a time limit is determined to be necessary, keep your comments to within that time limit. I would like to now call the meeting to order and ask our secretary, Ms. Chappelle Ingram, to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Burton. Here. Chan. Here. Chappelle Ingram here. Lai. Here. Lay. Here. McKenzie. Absent. Medina. Here. Morrow. Here. Stewart. Here. Witcher. Here. Mr. President, we have a quorum.
So we will begin this morning with our executive officer's report. Ms. Fisher.
Good morning. My name is Karen Fisher, and I'm the executive officer of the Dental Board of California. I'm going to start my report with our staffing update. I'm pleased to say that we are nearly 100% staffed, and at this point we really only have a few positions that are close to being filled. So we're very pleased at that. So we're almost up to full working capacity, and if we get there, we're hoping then this will distribute the work a little better and relieve some of the folks who have been really taking on the challenge of trying to keep up with our workload so that we don't fall too far behind in terms of everyday business. So our executive unit is fully staffed, the admin unit. As what I can report out is that we've been able to promote from within for a number of vacancies, and I believe that that has really enhanced the morale of the staff. We have a number of new people who have jumped in and really worked hard, and I'm very proud of the results. This has been a long time coming. When I took over, it's hard to believe, 6 years ago, we were in a bit of a challenge in terms of morale and high vacancies, and so I'm very pleased to see this improvement and hope that it will continue. That leads me into our board vacancies and the challenge that we're going to be under, and you as board members are going to be under until we can start to get some appointments. It's critical that we continue to do our business, and therefore it puts a little more pressure on those board members that do attend the meeting to be mindful when you get up to leave to take a call or to do a restroom break, to make sure there's always 8 people at the dais. So today, if you do need to get up, if you'll just walk by Yvette and give her a little tap on the shoulders so she's aware of who's out of the room. She's going to help us try to track everything. The board consists of 15 members, and that number stays, and you determine your quorum upon the number 15, not the number of people who are actually on the board. So our quorum number is 8 based on the number of 15. So that doesn't change. We're hopeful. The governor's office is very well aware of the vacancies that we have, and they're working diligently to try to make appointments. We're hoping that we will have at least a couple of appointments by the May meeting. But this will also provide challenges to us too. And so I'm hoping, because we'll have these new members now coming onto the board when we're going through our sunset review period. So when Yvette came on the board, she asked whether or not we had a mentor program. And I think that that's a brilliant idea. Typically what we try to do when we get new board members is I try to meet with them individually and do a mini orientation. And it's a lot of information. I'm sure that Dr. Chan can tell you recently, and also Ms. Medina. It can almost probably be overwhelming. I try to cram everything into everything you want to know about the board in one day. And they typically leave the office kind of glazed over and thinking, what have I done? But you both have jumped in, and I appreciate your willingness to learn. And I hope that you feel that you are getting more comfortable as we conduct our business and jumping in and participating. But at some point during this year, we could likely have 5 new members, which will require our seasoned members to perhaps partner up with somebody to help them along. I would certainly appreciate that. I'll do my best to try to walk side by side with the new members as we get them. And perhaps this is a good time to bring in new people, because we do the full review of the board, and the new members will be able to read our documentation, see where we've been, and see where we hope we're going. And so we will just take these challenges as they come. Your board packet itemizes essentially what the vacancies are. We have 1 RDH, 1 RDA, 1 public member, and 2 dental positions open. So again, I say that the governor's office is aware, and we're hoping we'll receive some news soon. Also, Dr. Morrow is actually serving in a grace period right now, but is eligible for another 4 years. He's expressed an interest to continue in that capacity, and we've sent that information on to the governor, so we hope we'll be hearing soon that he is reappointed to the board. Next on the agenda is the Form 700, and I just want to remind you it's critical that you fill that out as soon as you can. In the event, everybody is filing online, and please give yourself some time in the event that something doesn't work or something doesn't go through, so that you can call the appropriate people and get assistance. You're welcome to call Jerry Westerfeld in our office. She'll try to assist you, and also Jill Johnson with the executive office. She'll be able to assist you. You all should have electronic filing. It's in your board packet, the portal that you would go to. And so if you can try to get to that as soon as possible, it would very much be appreciated. The Fair Political Practices Commission doesn't play. If you're late, you're late. It's rare that they'll allow any sort of, that they recognize any reason why you would not file on time, and the penalties monetarily can be pretty stiff. And I can tell you that in the past we have had penalties against members. They haven't been members of our board, but they've been members of a committee, and it got pretty nasty. So just try to get to the form as quickly as you can, and mark that off your list so that you won't have to be thinking about that again. Next on the agenda is the National Board update. We haven't had a lot of discussion about this. It's been something that's been going on behind the scenes since about 2009, with keeping with the Joint Commission on National Dental Examinations strategic plan to move forward to take National Board Part 1 and Part 2 and essentially redo the exam into the Integrated National Board Dental Examination. I've written a little bit about this in my report. You can go ahead and take a look at it. I believe we'll probably have the examination committee take a look at this and see whether there's anything that we need to be doing. I'm seeing that, Lou, do you have a problem? You're good? Okay. We're having problems with our internet connection today, so there may be times when we have to take a brief pause and so that he can get reconnected. Getting back to the National Board exam. We'll have the exam committee take a look at specifically what we'll need to be doing. We'll try to get the word out to the dental schools in California, though they're very well aware of what's going to be happening. We have already had an omnibus bill language that changed the reference in our code from National Boards Parts 1 and 2 to just National Board. So we'll take a look at whether we need to be more specific in using the INBDE reference. I think we should be okay statutorily by just referring to it, by referring to the new exam by the National Board. But we will be having the examination committee take a look at that to see if there's anything else. Next, I thought I'd report on the dental therapist / mid-level providers. This is an issue that apparently has come up in California in the past, and it may be coming up again. It came to my attention because I received an email from Anthony Lum, the executive officer of the Dental Hygiene Committee. He was contacted by somebody from the Pew Charitable Trust asking about pilot projects that can be conducted through the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. And they were specifically asking about the classification of dental therapists. So everybody got to talking, Oshped, Tony, and me, and we said that essentially California doesn't have that classification, so we weren't really sure how they would be able to get a pilot project started. We will keep you posted if anything else comes of that in California. I also, coincidentally, around the same time, received information from Arizona, who is considering a statutory change to amend their Dental Practice Act to establish this licensure of a dental therapist. Also, mid-level providers, and they're called different things, but they're primarily all doing the same type of work. Alaska utilizes dental therapists, as does Minnesota and Oregon. And Washington State, Vermont, Maine, and other states are currently considering legislation that would allow this profession to function within the state. So stay tuned. Does anybody have any questions about that at this point?
I just might add that the Commission on Dental Accreditation has established educational standards for dental therapy programs. So if anybody is interested in seeing what those standards are, you can go to the Commission on Dental Accreditation's website under Accreditation, and you will find those standards listed.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow, and we will keep a watch out to see where this goes. Oh,
Just a brief comment. When this came up before, I know Dr. Stewart and Dr. Lay and I were involved, and what was worked out last time was basically our teledentistry pilot project with Dr. Glassman. That did get approval as a pilot project and was eventually implemented as 1174, and we're doing the regs on that now. Now, that's not, the scope of practice is much less, but still, that was an attempt to deal with that head on. And, you know, whether that's sufficient, we'll see.
and I believe Dr. Glassman was able to have the pilot project because we already had an RDA-EF category and the hygiene gene categories.
Yeah, that's correct. However, looking at the application for pilot projects that OSHPD has, there is a provision where you can introduce a new category, but it takes some special dispensation from OSHPD to do that. It isn't a straightforward application. It's a complicated application process. It involves public involvement as well and stakeholder input. So it isn't just you apply and you do it.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that and bringing information back to the board as we receive it. Next item on my report is 10F, and it's relating to the ADEA statistics. A couple of years ago, when Dr. Morrow served as president, he started giving this report, and it was well received by board members. And so I have something in your packet. We're going to project it on the screen back here for people in the audience to take a look at it. I was just going to go through each slide just very quickly because I think the information is really pretty interesting, and it's up to the board just to keep track of trends, and so I think it's certainly interesting information. If you want to start with the first slide. Am I in the way? We've been talking about, the cost of going to dental school and the high debt that people have when they come out, and trying to find out whether to go into private practice or go into corporate practices, things like that. So I find the information is pretty interesting. Well over a third of the dental graduates have a total educational debt of under $200,000. This includes educational debt incurred before and during dental school, so undergrad. Do you want to go ahead? So there's the slide on that. Next slide. So almost half of dental school graduates go directly into private practice. I'd like to look back and see at some point how fast that has grown, because my vision was that most dentists went into private practice after dental school, as opposed to joining these group practices. I'd say the group practices, and Dr. Morrill can correct me if I'm wrong, is probably something that's happened over the last 15 years, maybe. That part of the population essentially is growing. And I think that that's important for the dental board to understand that, because this may mean we need to look a little closer about how dentistry is practiced within a group setting. And I don't mean partners, I mean more like the Western dental types of things, where dentists come in and they maybe work part-time, or they come from a big group where the administration part of it is really not within their purview, and they come in and they do their job. We're seeing more and more discipline type things coming forward, and at some point, I think during our Sunset Review report and review, we'll be looking a little more closely at how this corporate practice of dentistry has affected the public. Next slide.
Karen?
Yes.
Could I just,
Yes,
a side
jump in.
note to that? If you look at the data relating to the type of practice that the graduates are going into, that more than 80% of them that are going into private practice are going into it as an employee rather than as a private practitioner. So the trend is not only going into the practice of general dentistry, but it's how you go into that, whether you're an independent practice owner or whether you're an employee of somebody else.
And I think it's interesting to note, about 10 years ago, when the stock market had a little more than a blip, I think it was 2008, many of the dentists in private practice had a lot of their retirement in the stock market. And so whereas dentists may have retired earlier or at an earlier age at some point, or brought an associate in to take over the practice, I think we're finding more and more that they're now working longer, and they're not bringing associates in to take over. So things are changing, and they changed pretty rapidly based on essentially the stock market. Okay, so this one is an interesting slide. The interest in advanced dental education is strong, but where you're seeing people continue to go is general dentistry. I think that's awesome, because what I have to compare that with is just medicine. And more people seem to be going into the specialties where we need the primary care people so bad. And so I thought that this was very interesting. So this slide is also interesting. The dental student population is becoming more diverse. And then go ahead, last one. Did you want to go back to that slide?
I was going to mention diversity in how, female, male, and age group, but not necessarily ethnicity. That would be something interesting to see, is also looking at it by ethnicity.
Sorry. There, and let me. So there's a few more slides up here that I just wanted to show you. We'll go through them pretty quickly that I didn't actually summarize in the report. So you can just take a look. We'll go through them rather quickly so you just can get an idea. The slides are in your packet, and it would be in the material that's posted on the website also. But you can go ahead, Jerry, and go to the next slide. This one, at some point, we'll look a little closer at. Are there enough dental graduates? And I'm sure we'll be discussing this come May, when we start to talk about trends and whether or not we do have a dental shortage in California. Next slide. And I think this slide becomes important when we talk about our foreign dental schools and the role that CODA plays in our dental schools throughout the United States, and that we have essentially established the same standards for dental schools that California approves. We're working toward that. The board is familiar with the fact that we have not updated our regulations to keep in step with the CODA standards. So we're in the process of making sure that our standards mirror those of CODA through our regulatory package. Next slide. This, again, is something we'll talk about further. The pathways are opening between states, increasing portability. Next slide. I think we saw that one already. No? Oh, there's your
Yeah, there-
ethnicity. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Okay, continuing on my report, I'm on committee assignments, which is G. Dr. Stewart made his committee assignments this year, and board members should have received a copy of the committee assignments and the members. This information is also posted on our website for those in the public interested in receiving a copy of that. Our committees meet only if there are action items, and it's likely that we will be having a number of committee meetings this year to deal with sunset review issues. That segues into my next item, which is H, and it's sunset review. So as Dr. Stewart mentioned in his report, our May meeting is going to be essentially our kickoff for sunset review. We're going to be bringing some of the issues that I believe we can start early and get a consensus on. Essentially will be the issues that were identified during the last sunset review and our response to them. We need to review that because that will be a significant part of our report that we submit to the legislature. In addition, we'll be talking about new issues that we would like to identify in the report. So if you would, between now and May, put your thinking caps on, and if there's anything that you would like to see as a new issue identified, send me off an email and we'll make sure we have it in the agenda. Staff has been tracking some of the new issues, some of the cleanup that we're going to be asking for. Those will be identified. This is sort of a caution to you that it could very likely be a very busy next 2 meetings in May and August. The more we can accomplish during that time, it will mean we won't have to call an additional special meeting to finalize the report. The legislature expects that the board members will sign off as a board and reflected in their minutes that they've essentially signed off on the report that will be submitted to the legislature. So we're going to work toward trying to get this done earlier rather than later. While we have not yet been notified, we believe that the submittal date will be December 1st. Our board meeting is right before that, November 28th and 29th, so it doesn't really give us time to review anything at the last meeting. So the May and the August meetings will be our main focus. My next item that I'm going to update the board on is regarding the University de la Salle School of Dentistry in Mexico. This school, it's hard to believe, but it's time for its renewal. Foreign dental schools need to submit a renewal package to the dental board every 7 years. And it's a pretty extensive, essentially, they fill out the same forms that they filled out when they initially applied with the board. You'll see in your packet that the dean of the University de la Salle, Dr. Triana, asked to speak with our then president, Dr. Witcher, and Dr. Morrow, who's our faculty representative of the board. We had a meeting last summer, and he came and just wanted to establish a relationship with us. Also to report that that school had been going through the CODA process, and they had gone through one of their site visits this past fall, and they're hoping to receive word soon that things are going well and that they've passed. But if they do get quota approval, then they're no longer required to get board approval. But they didn't want to take a chance that their approval would be delayed by CODA or not approved by CODA, so they have also submitted to us their application package, which we received. It was delivered to the board right before we left to come down here. It's beautifully put together. It's in English. It's the cover, everything is very clear. I haven't opened it up to look into the substance. Dr. Stewart has appointed a subcommittee of Drs. Lay and Dr. Morrow to take a look at it. So when we get back, when staff gets back to the office, we will be shipping that down to you next week. If you'll take a look at it, and then we'll strategize how you want to meet to review it. I anticipate representatives from De La Salle are available anytime to speak with. There's some question about whether a site visit will take place. That will be up to the subcommittee to recommend that or not. Dr. Morrow was on the site evaluation team that went 5 years ago or so, and not much has probably changed since then. It'll be up to the committee to review the information, find out whether they actually need to have a site visit. We have the option of not having to go. So stay tuned for that. That on top of everything else, it's going to be a busy year. Yes.
If I could just take a moment, I think it's of importance for us to realize and to know that the international accreditation process through CODA is fairly new. It did not exist when our statutes were passed in California that gave the authority to approve foreign dental schools to the dental board, because there was no other way of approving foreign dental schools at that time. Since then, CODA has established that process, and if, and I should say when, the University de la Salle is successful in receiving accreditation through CODA, that will be the very first one. And it is expected, and the rumors around the international dental education community is that there's going to be a flood of international institutions that apply to CODA, because they will realize that it is possible. So stay tuned, and I think this is an important milestone in the process of accreditation of foreign dental schools in California.
And I'd just like to make a comment. When Dr. Morrow and I received this packet from the La Salle, I'd like to remind everyone that we'll be evaluating the packet according to the current standards that are in the Dental Practice Act. It will not be the same standards that are listed under CODA regulations. I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We're on agenda item J, which is the DHCC Sunset Review. So I'm sure Anthony Lum is going to report on this later this morning when he comes up and reports, but they presented their background report to the legislature December 1st of last year, and I believe their hearing is coming up on February 26th. In the past, those hearings have been webcast, so that probably will be webcast. People can tune into that. We'll keep you apprised of what comes out of that. I've just itemized here in your meeting materials some of the things that they discussed in their report, and the report is available online for those interested in reading the full report. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this at this point because they're early in the process, and they have not even received their questions or the report back from the legislature. And Tony will give you more information on that when he and the board president, his committee president, report out. On to agenda item K, which essentially relates to legislation that went into effect January 1st of 2018. I'm not sure that the board was aware of this piece of legislation, but the board was notified when dentists working in California defaulted on student loans. And when we received notification, we contacted licensees and we asked them to get in contact with the essentially loan administrator to try to work out a payment plan, and we issued a citation. Well, effective January 1st, we can no longer issue citations. So we had issued 5 citations in the past, and actually those licensees got back on track and established a payment plan for their loans. And I think we have 1 outstanding citation that may be in the process of being fulfilled. So just wanted to give you some information about that. Are there any questions? The last one has to do with uniform standards, which we touched a little bit about in closed session. Uniform standards, effective January 1st of this year, legislation was passed to essentially bring back the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee, which is comprised of executive officers, to review a section of the uniform standards that people believe may be the sticking point of why there's so many issues with people perhaps coming into our diversion program or other diversion programs, the number of tests that are required. Essentially, that's very expensive, and it's causing a lot of people not to be able to meet that requirement. So we have to get together pretty quickly. I believe the department, the executive office will be coordinating this. The dental board is one of the boards that we have a diversion program still, so does pharmacy, a few other boards. Medical board is actually getting back into the business of establishing some sort of a substance abuse program, very different from a program that they had years ago. So I'll keep reporting on this, but it's likely that we will actually, if something comes of this, we will be needing to change our uniform standards, amend our uniform standards. And at this point, that concludes my report. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Anthony Lum, Dental Hygiene Committee. Good morning, Mr. President, board members. I just had a question in regards to foreign dental schools, if we can discuss that real quick. The dentists that are trained overseas have been, I'll just say it, kind of inundating us with requests for obtaining a dental hygiene license. And as of now, our law says that we don't accept foreign degrees. However, I just had a question as far as what you believe in, as far as the schools that you've looked at, how is their education as far as standards compared to the U.S.?
I would say that's a question we have to take offline, and you're welcome to approach Dr. Morrow, who's been our key person going through both the foreign schools that we have. So there's the university in Mexico and Moldova. So I believe he would be the person that you can ask the question to. We'll also be discussing foreign dental schools probably at the May meeting. So if you have any additional questions, we'll certainly put that in the packet so that we can discuss it. But I think, I'd say at this point, if it's appropriate, Michael, to just have Mr. Lum talk with Dr. Morrow offline.
Thank you.
Tony, your timing was good to be at the table, so why don't you just stay there? Are you being joined by
Yes?
Susan? Welcome, Susan.
Okay, I'm learning the technique here on the microphone. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to report on the activities of the Dental Hygiene Committee since your last meeting. My name is Susan Good, and I am the new president of the Dental Hygiene Committee, and with me is Anthony Lum, our executive officer. Our committee has been quite busy addressing the following items. First, sunset review. 2018 is our committee's sunset review year. Our staff submitted the necessary detailed report to the legislature by their December 1st deadline, and preparation for the sunset hearings has been different than it has in the past, in that the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency and the DCA have presented questions and exercises, some practice sessions to help us better prepare our committee for the hearings. Our hearing is set before the legislature on Monday, February 26th. Our committee is also continuing our review of all of the dental hygiene educational programs in the state, and schools with identified issues are currently working to resolve them and be compliant with the law. We have been working to fill 3 vacant positions. We've advertised for the first one, which is a probation monitor position. The other vacant positions are for our assistant executive officer, now that the executive officer position has been filled, and legislative and regulatory analyst as well. We expect those to be advertised very soon. Our committee is updating our laws and regulations book to incorporate new and existing language not contained in prior versions, and we're working with the DCA Office of Publications and Design to create it. Regulatory changes are in process for retired licenses, and a provision requiring out-of-state licensees to wear a name tag listing the duties that they can perform at sponsored free health clinics has also been submitted. We are in the process of initiating regulations for ITR, interim therapeutic restorations. Lastly, to increase cost efficiency, we have begun outreach via Skype and other such technology in place of in-person presentations, and that's worked out really well. And on behalf of the entire committee, we thank the Dental Board and staff for your assistance and your cooperation in revising the regulation regarding the mobile dental units and for removing reference to dental hygienists. Our committee will now be working on regulations to address this issue. And as always, we very much appreciate the ongoing communication and cooperation between our 2 programs and the relationships that we've established that continue to be thriving. And with that, I conclude our committee's report. Are there any questions?
So just to trail your question about dental schools, are there dental hygiene schools that have foreign student programs?
I haven't run across any foreign dental hygiene schools per se. Most of the applicant or potential applicant questions that we receive are actually foreign trained dentists who want to come to the country, and the only way that they seem to visualize to work is to obtain a dental hygiene license.
So is there an outreach to the dental hygiene schools to look into that?
At this point, we haven't discussed to do that. For licensure in California, it has to be a committee-approved program, so that's why we haven't accepted foreign degrees, but it's something that we can look into.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, I just had one clarifying comment to make from a comment that I made yesterday in regards to the ITRs. I said yesterday that HAPs can perform the ITR function. However, just for clarity, for any of our licensee categories, they must go through the ITR training before they can provide those services. Thank you.
Any questions of Tony or Susan from the board?
I just wanted to make a comment. Ms. Good, I'm glad that your committee is doing Skyping, but I hope that you'll be able to continue to come to our meetings because we do enjoy the reports that you give, and we like it that you're interested in knowing what we're doing here too. So we certainly appreciate you, especially on days like today, trying to get here in this terrible fog. So appreciate your coming.
Well, thank you, and that is not on our list of doing and not coming here. So we gain a great deal by being here as well. Thank you.
And on a personal note, Tony, for identifying a wonderful restaurant last night and then leading us there so we didn't get lost, that was much appreciated as well, so thank you. We now have item 12, a report of the Department of Consumer Affairs staffing activities, and Chris Castrillo is with us this morning. And Chris is the Deputy Director of the Board and Bureau of Services. And Chris made the effort to join us for dinner last night. And when you put your feet under a table and enjoy a nice conversation, it was a very pleasant way to meet Chris. And so we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
And we have to tell Chris, unfortunately, you have to hold the button down the whole time you're talking on the
All
mic.
right.
So
I think I'm doing it correctly. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come and address the board here today, and I enjoyed the opportunity to meet you all last night and enjoy a meal, and got the strength here to hold this button down here for a extended period of time. So President Stewart, Vice President Burton, Executive Officer Fisher, again, thank you for the opportunity to come down here and speak with you all here today. I am 4 months into my new position at the Department of Consumer Affairs. A little bit of background about myself. I come with a background in legislative advocacy, having worked most recently as a legislative advocate, covering a wide variety of policy areas, including healthcare, foster youth, higher education, local government, and public transportation, to name a few. I also have a background in campaign management, having worked on both candidate and initiative campaigns in both California and Oregon. Really, really excited about the opportunity to start this new trajectory here at the Department of Consumer Affairs and interacting with our boards all across California. So thank you again for having me here. Wanted to start with a couple of quick updates from the department. Last week, we held our first Directors Quarterly meeting of 2018. We had over 40 attendees with over 35 of our programs represented. We hope this discuss the important issues facing our department and its various boards and bureaus. At this meeting, we talked a lot about our strategic plan. We've put together a wide variety of action items to put in place for 2018. Our expanded Office of Board and Bureau Services will be looking at taking on some issues with respect to licensing and enforcement, putting together some work groups on both licensing and enforcement across both of our healing arts and non-healing arts boards, and taking a look at some opportunities to put together some best practices, see what's working at our boards, and disseminate that information across all of our boards in the attempt that we're all working together on issues of commonality. So we're really, really excited to do that, and we look forward to future Directors Quarterly meetings where we can continue this kind of dialogue. And thank you, Ms. Fisher, for attending. That was a pleasure to have you there. Executive Officer Brown Bags, similar to our Directors Quarterly, we're trying to have as many avenues of communication available to the Director and the Department in our programs. The Executive Officer Brown Bags are an opportunity for our executive officers from all of our boards to get together, talk about current issues that are going on at their board, and again, sort of share information and share best practices, and just also an opportunity to get together and be with each other and interact. And that's going to be coming up on February 28th. Our office will be spearheading that and organizing it, so another meeting that we're looking forward to. One item that we have, that I've gotten to learn about, is the Future Leadership Development Program that the department has had this year. The inaugural cohort will be graduating in March 7th. This program is a program in which we are trying to cultivate the future leaders of the department. We have staff across of a number of our boards and bureaus who have participated. They get to meet with DCA executives. Just this past week, they met with Appointment Secretary Mona Pascal, and the opportunity to, again, cultivate the future leaders of the department. And that inaugural cohort's been doing a fantastic job. And again, they'll be graduating in March 7th, and we look forward to pulling a new cohort together for the coming year. So to that effort, we would certainly recommend that opportunity to any dental board staff to participate. My finger's getting awfully tired, excuse me. And just the last thing I wanted to mention was the board member orientation training, and I think this kind of speaks to what your executive officer was discussing with having new board members come on with the dental board, with the vacancies. My office puts together the required board member orientation training. That training is required within 1 year of appointment or reappointment to the board. We've established our dates for 2018. The first one for this year is going to be March 21st, and then we'll have subsequent board member orientation trainings on June 6th, September 18th, and December 5th. And Ms. Fisher was talking about, you're going to have a number of, you have a number of new vacancies. You're likely to have a number of new board members come in. Personally, I think the beauty of the board member orientation training is that you have board members from across all of our boards, and they're not just new board members. They're board members that have, been on a board, right? You have to do it within 1 year of reappointment to a board. So in addition to what you all might be looking to do here as your own board and mentoring incoming board members, the board member orientation training is an incredible opportunity to interact with board members from all of our other boards who've been there, who've done the similar, have similar backgrounds and really know kind of the ropes of board meetings. So I think that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for any of your new incoming board members. So we look forward to seeing them there, and of course we'll be working with your board and the governor's office and keeping your executive officer aware of getting those vacancies filled, and we look forward to doing that. One last note, Ms. Fisher mentioned in her executive officer report the coordination, the Substance Abuse Coordination Committee. She is correct. Our executive office is looking to pull that group together specifically to look at Uniform Standard number 4. My office, along with my staff, is currently doing a little bit of background work on the original uniform standards and how those came to be, and getting our ducks in a row. And we really look forward to convening that group and having a productive discussion around Uniform Standard number 4. So please do stay tuned for additional information on that. And again, just really appreciate the opportunity to come down here and speak with you all. Our Office of Board and Bureau Services, in addition to myself, we have 2 new assistant deputies, Karen Nelson and Patrick Lay. With the expansion of that office, our goal is to be in constant contact with your board, and whether it's with your executive officer, the dental board staff, or the board members ourselves, my office is here to facilitate any questions that you might have. We have a very innate ability to connect the dots within the department. Our department aligns a lot of services with the board: legal, legislation, publications, communications, and to the extent that you need to get to the folks within the department, or you have questions that might not fit nicely in those buckets, we're always here to help each and every one of you with that. So we look forward to working with you. So again, thank you for the opportunity to address your board today.
Thank you, Chris, for those remarks. Board members, any questions of Chris?
I just wanted to compliment you on the newsletter. That's a new and refreshing addition.
Thank you. We have a good time putting that together, actually. So we really appreciate that you're reading it and that it's useful. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great having dinner with you last night and finding out more about you. I was just the board member orientation. I went last year, and it was superb. And if there are other can other board members who've taken it the first time, and they're coming up, probably coming up again, can they take it even if it is not necessarily required in that year within the 4 years? Because it appeared to be a 180-degree turnaround. It was just superb.
So I really appreciate that feedback. We put a lot of time, and we're also interested in all that. Always open to tweaking it. It's an 8-hour. It's a full day. There's a ton of information in there for a new individual coming in to DCA and the department. Incredibly helpful for me. I believe you're more than welcome to attend again if you'd like. The requirement is for new members and within a year of appointment and reappointment to the board. I'll also say that as part of our strategic plan, we're looking at how can we package a lot of these training materials, the whole host of resources that I feel like within the department currently we have kind of spread out at various kind of websites. We have an EO portal, we have a board member resource portal. So we're looking at ways where we can take that information and make it a little bit more readily available for folks who maybe like you've done the training. Maybe you want a refresher on a few items. So that's an avenue that we're looking to explore as well, to something to complement, not to replace the board member orientation training, to be clear. But we always welcome opportunities for folks to come, and I think would like to discuss that for you, because now that you've mentioned it, my brain's kind of going on ways where maybe we could utilize board members who have gone through the training and come, and there's opportunities to speak and interact. So I would love to talk with you a little bit more about that.
Chris, could you talk a little bit about the discussion that occurred at the directors' meeting about the executive officer's pay?
Absolutely. Trying to figure out which finger to use now. They're dying. Exercise. So as, again, I mentioned the director's quarterly meeting, a big part of that meeting was sort of an unveiling, if you will, of a number of the strategic plan items that we are looking to tackle in 2018. There's various components of our strategic plan that are going to take us farther out to 2019, 2020, but we did try to focus on the items that we're looking to address here in 2018. One of those strategic plan items is an executive officer salary study. And as I understand, there was a salary study done, I believe back in 2010 or 2011, that took a look at our programs. As you all are aware, each of our programs are kind of slotted at these different levels, and it's sort of based on licensee population, staff population, and so what we would like to do is we'd like to contract with a third party to come in, take a look at these levels, take a look at these salary bands that our executive officers are making, and try to take a look at do these levels make sense? Are where these boards kind of lined up? Is that sort of their appropriate slot? And hopefully come back with some recommendations about ways that we can not only maybe improve the way that our certain programs are leveled with respect to their salary band, but also take a look at the EO salary study process in and of itself. We're currently in the process of going through and contracting with vendors. We want to make sure that we have a variety of individuals to choose from. We don't just want to go back and use the same study that we did from 7-8 years ago. So that process could take a couple to 3 months with respect to solicitation. Would like to put together a robust scope of work and then hopefully have something turned around by the end of the year. But some of that will depend on how the final scope of work is, and we'll obviously be keeping you all updated as that process moves along. But it is a very key component of our strategic plan and one that we're excited to get underway.
Thank you, Chris, and you've made us more aware of how your office can be a resource for us, and we appreciate that. Now go rest your finger. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 13, report on the December 13, 2017 California Department of Public Health Oral Health Program Advisory Committee Partnership.
The meeting that we had was actually a telephonic meeting. It was scheduled for an hour and a half, and I think it probably ran less than 30 minutes. The big thing that The big thing that I wanted to report out of that is that there were 57 grant applications received, and of those 57 for county funding, 25 have been approved. They have been authorized for 11 positions, 5 of which have been filled, and they've scheduled some further interviews for other positions. The big news in January was the release of the California Oral Health Plan. And that plan is accessible online for download, for those of you who'd like to download it. The next meeting, they've also tried to schedule some regional meetings and not have all the meetings in Sacramento. However, there is a meeting coming up on Tuesday, March 20th in Sacramento. Further, the plan is to go out and do workshops and continue surveillance activities, and to have a summit sometime in May. So things are moving right along. They have been actually very, very busy. There were some legislative hearings in January. One was and these meetings were on healthcare delivery and universal coverage. And so those discussions included discussions about the CHIP program and a number of other things. So those are kind of the highlights. They have been really, really active. And I'm so pleased to see that, and so pleased to see, you guys know how passionate I am about coverage for everyone. And so I am really excited about the restoration of benefits for adults in California, of dental benefits for adults in California. And I just couldn't be more pleased with the way this is going and the participation of counties in the process. So that's kind of the highlight. Hoon, did you have anything else to add?
No, not really. The only thing is I would encourage all of you, to get on the website, Oral Health webpage, to read the report. It's very well done.
We'll send the link to all board members so that you'll be able to click on the link. I wanted to add that Dr. Kumar called me and was inquiring about our loan repayment program. And he was going to try to do outreach to the counties that are receiving monies from this fund that was created and try to partner the recruitment of more dentists to underserved areas, letting them know that these monies are available through the dental board for payment of their loan. So I'll be speaking with him on a regular basis to see where that's going and to see how we can assist in that.
Thank you, Fran, for that report. Appreciate it. Dr. Hong, thank you. Board, any questions?
What was the total dollar amount that those grants awarded? Do you know, just off? I mean, I can check it on the website if you don't know it.
I don't remember.
It's a whole bucket full of money, and I don't want to say the thing because I may be wrong.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the number. I know it was a lot of money, but it's a 5-year program, and the county awards are just one part of it, because there are many other initiatives, in the whole program. So I'm sorry, I can't think of the numbers
We'll report
right now.
back.
Fran, I have a question, Fran. So are they having issues recruiting dentists to work on the underserved?
I think that is, I don't know the answer to that question, but Dr. Kumar's total effort to make an inclusive program. The dentists in underserved areas is what it is and has been what it is. I don't know. I don't know what is going on with counties and whether counties are reporting back, but I would suspect that this comes from his interest in making that happen.
And I'd like to add that I think one of the main issues here is that there have been funds available in that loan repayment program for years, and we have been struggling to get people to access those funds and then serve in those communities. So we're working hard to do that, but it's been a struggle, and we have not been as successful as we would like.
I have a question. Are we contacting school districts, especially in those areas that are predominantly low income, high poverty rate, high crime rate? And I know San Bernardino Unified School District is one of the lowest in income, and there's connections with Loma Linda. There's different programs that are set. I'm just curious, are you reaching out to school districts in these areas and trying to make sure that the youth are connected to these programs? I know they're not necessarily for high schools, but for those that are
I'm not certain of your question. Are you talking about for recruiting dentists, or are you talking about?
For both recruiting dentists and looking at loan opportunities through the grants, right? Am I misunderstanding it? Where they have the loan repayment program, there's different programs, how there's money there set, unless I'm misunderstanding.
The loan repayment program that was established by the dental board is to essentially recruit dentists to underserved areas to work, and as part of doing that, they can receive up to $105,000 to pay back their dental school loan.
Okay, yes, okay. That makes more sense.
I think that's a little different than maybe where you were heading, but I think
Yes, but then,
I think where you're heading is another issue that we should bring to the table and discuss during
in
sunset review.
recruitment, at least for potential, at least educating them early on and making sure that there are these pathways, career pathways or educational pathways.
When we started the California Dental Association Foundation about 17, 18 years ago, part of the original programs was to partner with the dental board at the time to learn how to develop these programs. So the California Dental Association has a very successful program in doing that. Maybe we should outreach again to see how that same pool of applicants could benefit us.
When was it last sunset review that we looked at this issue again? We did work with CDA to try to come up with some new, to really kind of brainstorm about perhaps things that we had not thought about and ways to reach out. There are a number of factors. It's just not that simple. And part of it not being that simple is that how payments are made, whether payments are made up front, whether there is some tax deduction. There are just a number of things that make it very, very difficult to make it a program that is going to be one that is attractive to everybody. But this loan repayment program was on the books when I first came in. And our numbers have been low. And that was one of the reasons that we reached out to CDA to talk about how to do that. We also talked about federal tax deductions and state tax deductions, and whether some of that money can come up front. So it's, you know, on its face, you would think that people would say, oh, this is great. I get to serve my community and I get to have my loan paid. But it's been a challenge.
I apologize. I made the comment about the loan repayment program, referencing it back to the oral health advisory. I think we got a little off topic here, so.
Yeah, that's why I didn't understand the
Yeah,
question at
I'm
first.
sorry, I take full responsibility. But actually, the only reason I brought up the loan repayment program was to say Dr. Kumar is aware of it now. We're going to see how this fits into his oral health plan for the state. And hearing the discussion about the loan repayment program, that is certainly something that will be on a future meeting as we go through Sunset Review.
Wanted to go back to your question about the total amount. I know that I have reported that. I know that it's in the meeting minutes somewhere. I know that we were really surprised at, there was a concern about how many federal dollars would come into the program given a new administration. But the boon was the tobacco tax. And the tobacco tax has really increased that amount. And I don't want to be on record as saying an amount because right this minute I don't remember. But I do know that I've reported that information.
I think it's very encouraging that we've learned that Dr. Kumar is, you know, is on his plate and he's going to be communicating with Karen, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing more of that now moving forward. So thank you. All right, I think we can move on to item 14, licensing certification permits. Welcome, Sarah.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer of the Dental Board. In your board meeting packets today, you'll find the licensure statistics for the dentistry program, including all of the permits that we issue. As I mentioned yesterday in our dental assisting licensure report, I've been noticing some fluctuations with the overall licensing populations, that the statistical information that we've been able to pull out of our licensing program. We are working on setting up some manual controls in the office to kind of test this against what electronic statistics we're able to pull. So I do have some questions relating to these actual numbers. On page 2, we've reported the number of dental licenses that have been issued, broken out by pathway for the past 3 years. On average, we issue a little over 1,000 dental licenses per year. Then we have the update on the total number of active permits issued by the board and the active licensees by county. These numbers are all as of the middle of January. And on page 4 and 5, you have a report of the number of applications that we've received, those that have been deemed deficient, denied, withdrawn, and approved, as well as some statistical information in the packet. I'm happy to report at this time we do not have any backlogs. This time of year it tends to be slower. We typically receive more of the LBR and LBC pathway applications. We are starting to come into that time of year where we're going to be seeing a lot more applications for the Rebbe and the portfolio examination. And I also wanted to mention that as of March 1st, we are beginning to collect the fee for the dentistry law and ethics examination application. It is a fee of $125. This is a new fee, and it was a fee that was established as part of the fee audit that we needed to assess. So the dental schools have been notified. I sent an email to the deans at the beginning of January. I also wanted to point out that last Friday, staff became aware of another issue with our licensure renewals. I'm sure you'll recall at the November meeting, I had reported that we had just found out about an issue with our renewals that expired on January 30th of 2018, that the delinquency fees that were printed on the renewal notices were incorrect, and so we went through a process to reissue new renewal notices. Last Friday, we became aware of the same issue happening again, this time for our April renewal notices, and so we've been working with the DCA Breeze team to rectify the situation, and the revised renewal notices are scheduled to be mailed out today. So those folks that are due to expire at the end of April will be receiving revised renewal notices with a notification as to what has happened, and we've also posted the information on our board website and sent out an email blast.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions of the board? At this time, I think I'm going to ask for a 10-minute recess so we can have a little restroom break. And let's come back at about 10:27. All right, thank you. And we are on item 15, examination updates, and I believe Sarah has this one.
Yes. So at the last board meeting, Daniel Yoon, the staff analyst that's in charge of our portfolio program, had reported to the board that board staff and board members, two board members, Dr. Morrow and Dr. Lay, had visited all of the dental schools in California to discuss the portfolio examination. As a result of those meetings, there were several questions that had come up that staff has been working on further researching. Some of the questions have allowed staff to form short-term goals, and so they've been working over the last few months on researching, clarifying the patient criteria regarding each of the competency examinations, what the reciprocity requirements are in other states, whether or not we can digitize portfolio rubrics and grading sheets, and posting information to the public regarding the portfolio examination. And so Daniel has provided this informational memo for the board to review today. He's done quite a bit of research. He's gone back through all of our existing regulations for the portfolio examination and has reviewed the initial rulemaking documents, or actually the entire rulemaking file, which includes all of the data that we relied upon to make all of our decisions, including all of the psychometric reports that developed the requirements for the portfolio examinations, our final statement of reasons that explain why we made the decisions we did. And so he has compiled in attachment 1 in your board meeting packet the requirements for each of the competency examinations and what information is available and whether or not it's in regulation or it's in the rulemaking file as it relates to the competency or the patient criteria selection for the competency examinations. He's also worked diligently to contact all of the 50 states to see whether or not the portfolio examination would qualify for licensure in their state. And so attachment 2 lists by state whether or not they can qualify for licensure in that state through what pathway. And so there are some outstanding states that we're not quite sure. We're still waiting on information, but that information is also available in your board packet. Daniel has also been working on digitizing the forms. He's drafted up forms. We've received some feedback from dental schools that had already digitized their forms. Right now, we're in the process of just reviewing the legalities behind that, and I hope to have that information out to the dental schools in the next few weeks. The question relating to the digitizing of the form is just on the board's end, because we're considered custodian of record, what that means for our filing. So that we're working on those as short-term goals right now to make that process a little bit easier for the schools, and we'll continue to work with the dental schools moving forward.
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the staff for their excellent work in this area. This was a lot of work that I know Daniel had to work on, and I think this is something that that I asked for, and also the schools, asked for when we did the site visit. So thank you so, so much for this information. Very comprehensive.
Yes, I also want to compliment you and staff for the best word that I can come up with at this point in time is fantastic job of listing on our website the pertinent information regarding the portfolio examination process. And I would encourage all board members and anybody else that is at all interested to go to the dental board's website. On the menu at the top, select Forms and Publications. Go down under Publications, scroll almost all the way down to the bottom, and you will find a title for Information for Portfolio Packet. Information Portfolio Exam Information Packet. I actually printed out the contents of that packet, and it's a page and a half long of material that is posted there for everybody to see. And it goes all the way from the bill, AB 1524, that made it happen, to all of the competency examinations, the grading rubrics, the assessment forms that are utilized, tabulation of how the scores are developed from the examination process. And it is a fantastic accumulation of information regarding the portfolio exam. It has the candidate's manual, and it also has the instructor's calibration manual. So it's all out in the open. And I just want to add to your looking into the number of states that accept portfolio exam. I received, and I think I copied to you, to Karen, an email from a faculty member at the University of Iowa. And the state of Iowa has accepted the portfolio examination for licensure in their state. And in addition to that, the school, at a dental school at Iowa, is utilizing the portfolio examination process for their graduates, implementing the dental board's portfolio examination process. So I think we're making some progress towards acceptance of the portfolio examination, and I think we're making good ground.
And to follow up on that, Dr. Morrow, you are authorized to answer the questions that representative from Iowa. In reading the email, Dr. Lay and I were looking at it. I think the board, it may be time for the board during sunset review to consider a statutory change to allow somebody who essentially is using the California portfolio at their school to allow reciprocity as a pathway to licensure. I think that at least should be brought up for discussion, and if there's a chance that the board would lean toward getting this authorized in statute, sunset review may be the time to do that. So I think that will be a huge key in jumping our program out there. And since we've had a number of states who essentially have benefited from having all the information on our website, the regulation package, all the forms and everything have already been developed. They essentially just have to change the name of the state and take it through their process. So California's done the work, and bless former board member, public member Kathleen King for wanting the board to try to benefit from that. It would have been lovely, had it not been developed on state time, for us to be able to recover some money from offering that. But if California's plan can be essentially spread like wildfire throughout the country, I think that is a huge, priceless reward that the dental students could benefit from moving forward. So that will be an issue that I believe will be coming forward in sunset review, whether or not it's time to think about allowing that to be a pathway for, say, Iowa students who go through essentially the California program that the Iowa Dental School is going to be implementing, to accept them as licensure. We already have reciprocity in California, but there are requirements for 5 years of clinical service and things like that. So, I mean, this would be a positive in many ways.
I like that idea, very visionary.
Thank you, Sarah. Dr. Lay, are you,
There has been some confusion among the California dental
excuse me,
school-
I'm sorry, Dr. Lay, let me I forgot to ask for public comment.
Alan Felsenfeld, CDA, and for most of you know that I was one of the people that was in the initial development of the portfolio. I go back to its very beginning, and I think Dr. Casagrande is pretty happy. One of the visions that we had about this is that it would catch on at some point in time, and other states would be doing this. So the Iowa school that is doing this is part of the dream that we had at some point. And it's also nice to see, albeit slowly, more and more students taking this exam and more states. Now, I had numbers of 20 states that I talked with Dr. Morrow about. You have 12 in the report, but I suspect some of them may have flipped in the interim since the report was developed. And it's really gratifying to see how this, for all the work and for all the years it took us, is finally making its way into a very viable means of licensure, and goes back to the original concept of no more freestanding human subjects after dental school graduation, which I think we all believe is really not necessarily the best way to license anybody.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. Further public comment? Dr. Lay, thank you.
Okay, I will keep this short. So there seems to be still some confusion with the candidates who are taking the REB exam to obtain license in California. So I want to thank, Karen, for working through this confusion, and she has been able to provide some clarification to our candidates. California is still accepting REB exam as it is. Perio is part of the exam. It is not optional. Operative, is still the same. Whatever rep requires, that's what we'll take if the candidate passes that. So basically, nothing has changed. And thank you, Karen, for providing that clarification to the candidates and also to rep. And I know that Dr. Mark Christensen is here representing rep, so I'd like to ask him to come up and see if he could provide any other updates, and also giving the board the opportunity to ask him questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't really have anything to present formally to say. I'd just like to say thank you. We're here. I'm here representing REB because Norm Magnuson, who's president, and Bruce Horn have had other obligations. I think they've both explained to you about the content of the exam and about changes coming in 2018. So unless there are questions, I don't have anything to say about that. I would say that REB is very concerned that the instrument that's still being used for the conventional exam, I hear your enthusiasm for the portfolio, and I think that's great. The world is changing, as we all know. But for a conventional exam, we're very confident that you have a good instrument with the REB examination, that it supports protection of the public, it's reliable, and you can use the outcome to make valid licensing decisions. Even though there are changes this next year being made in the examination, they've all been thoroughly field tested. We don't expect any surprises. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
So if a candidate took REB without the perio portion, and we receive an application, is there and then they take just the perio portion, is there a certificate for that, or is there an acknowledgement of that?
So the results should be available to you as a board with your log on to the REB website, and you should have all the detail of the examination. As far as we are concerned, perio is still part of the REB examination, and it would be required, I would think, for you in California. So if somebody doesn't have that, they should not be licensed. The big change for 2018 really is the development of this simulated prosthetic exam where they prepare teeth on a typodont. We don't necessarily recommend that. It's been developed because we get requests. Rebbe is an independent testing agency that serves states like California, but it serves many states across the land, and some states require an examination like that. They want that. They've been requesting it of us, so we developed it. We think it's as good as or better than any of the other agencies' exams of that sort, but it's really a sophomoric preclinical exercise on plastic teeth, so we think it has the least fidelity of any of the exam components that we have, and you don't really need it in California. We commend you for recognizing that and taking the exam as it's presently constituted. And but Perio, we feel like, is in most of the states that use our examination still recognize there are some states that don't require Perio. So for candidates going to those who know they're going to those places and are not concerned about portability, they would be licensable in those locations without the Perio section. But when you receive results, you should see not only what restorations they did, whether they did Perio or not. If there's the prosthetic section they didn't attempt it, it will say not attempted, so you'll know that information. And if they took the examination multiple times, you'll have that information as well. So if they took them several times to pass the operative section or the Perio section, you'll know that.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the remarks. Always good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Through the chair, I have an additional comment. So one of the questions that came up, Rebbe now, rather than having 2 restorations, is if the candidate passes on the first try, then there is not, they don't have to take a second try at it. And so I clarified that that would be accepted in California. Also clarified, essentially, we're holding in place all the other sections until our occupational analysis is complete for dentistry, which would be perhaps this summer, and then we would move on. Rebbe would be up for its additional review by the board, and we'll be using the occupational analysis at that time to look at the examination that Rebbe offers. Also, I believe in Sunset Review, an issue will come up to see whether or not we should amend statute to have a time limit on the Rebbe in terms of will California accept someone who took the Rebbe 5 years ago or 10 years ago and perhaps hasn't been practicing? So the board will, that issue will be brought before the board for discussion, whether you want to put a time limit of Rebbe is essentially only good for the past 2 years, or pick a number, and we'll be discussing that. So I think we've reached a balance. I did send a letter to all the dental schools clarifying what the board is accepting with this new change in 2018, and I received comments back that they were pleased to get that information. I think we're good to go, but we'll keep the board updated along the way to see how this process works.
And thank you for providing that clarification to the schools and also to the candidates.
Moving on to 16, enforcement. Oh, sorry, C, I missed one. Thank you.
Just a quick update on the status of the occupational analysis for dentists and the implementation of the ADEX examination. In 2016, Governor Brown signed Assembly Bill 2331, which authorized the dental board to accept the ADEX examination as a pathway to licensure. Before we can do that, though, we have to conduct an examination validation study of the examination, and to do that, we have to complete an updated dental or DDS occupational analysis. So we have contracted with the Office of Professional Examination Services within the Department of Consumer Affairs. They've been working on the occupational analysis since last July. It is anticipated to be completed by this mid-year. We are currently in the process of conducting the workshops that are involved with the study. I just got an update yesterday from OPES that they are launching the pilot survey this next week, so that will go out to a certain set number of licensees that meet a certain criteria that OPS has set aside. And so depending on the responses that we receive and the willingness for people to participate in this study, we do anticipate that this should be complete by June or July of this year. Once the OA is complete, then we will launch into the study of the 8X examination, which is only expected to take approximately 6 months. So we are on track at this point. I expect everything to be completed in early 2019.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions from the board?
Question? Did we receive our first installment, the payment for RPS? I want to make sure that the board is,
Yes,
Yeah.
we're working closely with the 8X representatives, and they do know that they are
I don't
responsible
want
for
to be stuck
payment.
with the bill. That's all.
And we're working on the contract right now.
There is no hesitation on 8X part at all.
Thank you, Sarah.
Good morning. Carlos Alvarez, Enforcement Chief. Before I get into reporting our statistics, because it's an important part, our statistics just changed, from quarter of 1 to 2%, 1 to 2%, and, complaints coming in, kind of come in waves. They come up high, then they decrease, come up high and decrease. So January 2018, identified the whole process. I came in and straight set up a meeting with our staff and with our managers, because that was the goal, is to address the statistics. And so therefore, I was addressing this. One of the things that I called for was for more case audits, more frequent case audits, in order to bring these and to approve their statistics better with us. The other thing that also was identifying the process in writing, from start to finish in complaint compliance unit, where we're kind of seeing some backlog there. So putting it in writing, identifying the process, and getting with all the managers, sit down so we can identify that and decrease our numbers here and improve our numbers. The other thing that came in and with the Attorney General's office with the issue of further cases to be investigated, one of the things that Linda Schneider came up with training, and I'm very, very big on training. I'm glad she brought that up. Sending staff, one of the things that I came up with 2018 was to send staff and managers to more training. Staff improves individually, and we improve as an organization, as a dental board. And so while they're getting the training and improving, that improves our numbers here or our statistics as well. So when I came into 2018, it was just positive, setting the goal, and this process is going to be identified through the whole year. So it's not going to stop. So I just want to bring that up as I'm going through the statistics and reporting it. I can assure you that, yes, we're addressing it, and we're improving it through training, through meetings, and through case audits. So I just want to bring that up to everybody here, all the board members. So with, I'll start off with the complaint and compliance. Complaints received was 843 for the quarter. So for this, again, for this quarter, it decreased by approximately 83 cases from the last quarter. And again, as I say, just kind of comes in waves here. And so we received approximately, it's 281 that we received a month on average. So complaint cases that are currently open, it's 1,460. And that's a decrease, again, from the last quarter. So approximately right now, we have approximately about 292 cases that are assigned to the analyst. And so cases closed by the complaint unit has been 265 cases closed. And so here we had kind of identified that the last average was at 218, and so it was a little bit slower on 201 days. So part of the process, because we're waiting on records, we're kind of waiting on the complainants to send in documents. So we're it's a standstill when we're waiting on records that we're requesting from subtreaters, from subjects, and so I just want to say that's kind of the numbers when it kind of slows down is because we're waiting on that. And so then I move into investigation. So there's 1,019 cases that are open right now, and we have 59 cases, inspection cases that are open currently right now. So if you notice, again, with this, it increased from last quarter. We had 926, and now it increased. So like I said, I keep talking about that wave that's coming in. And so it increased. Complaints from age from 0 to 3 months has increased, because one of the reasons is because we're paying attention to these cases that are coming up in statute 3 years. We're really working on that, on those cases. So we're prioritizing all those cases there. So with that increase, yeah, we'll kind of, the beginning, kind of slow down, they'll back up. But that's because we're prioritizing cases. And so it kind of slows down just a bit. So investigations closed, we had 163 cases that were closed. And with those 163 cases that were closed, they also went to the Attorney General's office, or it went to the District Attorney's office. So that was an average about 54 cases per month that were closed. And again, as we get into this, we're doing more case audits in order to speed up the process and reprioritize cases. So we're doing all this, as I explained in the beginning. And so administrative and disciplinary action, so we had a total of 16 citations, and that increased. And the reason that increased, because we want to send the most important cases to the Attorney General's office, so we want to decrease those cases. And so, again, Karen and I, we sit down, we go over these cases, and we want to issue these citations. We want to go with citations a little bit more, and we dig deep into these reports that we get. And, just for example, some of the cases that we come back to say, oh, well, there's negligence because record keeping. Well, that's not necessarily a case we want to send to the Attorney General's office. So we'll address it to have a citation. And while we're addressing that citation, we're also doing remedial education in order to improve that as well. So we get into citations and we get into remedial education in order to improve that, so we don't see it the next quarter. So there's 27 accusations that were filed for the second quarter, and there was an increase from the last quarter. And again, as Karen and I, we get together, we go over the cases, and like I said, we want to send the most important cases to the Attorney General's office. So currently there's 45 cases were referred to the Attorney General's office, and approximately there's 143 cases pending. And then 6 cases went to the District Attorney's office from the last quarter. And currently there's 225 open probation cases. And so that's a 3-month average for disciplinary cases to be completed was 1,222 days. So that's 201 days faster than the previous quarter. So that's a positive there that we have. And so just to address yesterday with the Attorney General, when they gave the numbers, accusations, compared to our numbers that are high, that's because we report everything here in our statistics, report everything. So what we do is we just don't count the accusations. We count the statement of issues, petitions for reinstatements. We count all that. So yesterday when we were looking at the numbers, Attorney General was reporting their accusations at a low number. Ours are high because we include everything as well. So that kind of explains the number difference between our statistics and theirs. So does anybody have any questions?
Carlos, you said that there were 225 probation cases. How does that break down per investigator? Do you know?
Yeah, well, right now, the high numbers right now for probation cases in Southern California. So our numbers are higher there. I know we have different staff. We have inspections, and our inspections that that do the probation cases. So I can't really tell the average. I don't know if Patrick could probably assist me because he probably knows the numbers a little bit more what it's signed to Orange County. About 12. Yeah. So now I was going to say about 10. About 10. Yeah, each investigator, so 10, yes.
Does this number 225 include tollers?
Yes.
Okay, and for board clarification, somebody tolls essentially when they're out of state? Or they're in state and not able to meet this 16-hour-a-week requirement to work? So in essence, their tolling means their probation is on hold.
And that we send out letters as well, just to make sure that they're not back in the state practice. They came back to state practicing and they didn't notify us, so we are constantly sending out letters as well and checking up on that.
With those additional cases that we compared to the AOG, do we have a list of those additional ones that we report compared to that they don't report?
We do. We have those, our numbers, so our discipline coordination unit has those numbers and those cases that go to the Attorney General's office. So they are identified.
Okay.
President Stewart, through the chair. On page 2 of your report, you have identified a specified number of investigative cases that are open and a certain number of inspection cases. Could you explain what's the difference between an investigative case and an inspection case?
Yes, so the inspections is when someone complains to the board, they file a complaint, and they're saying that the office is unsanitary. So that's what counts as an inspection. So an investigator won't investigate the unsanitary conditions, and sometimes they'll complain that it's unsanitary, then at the same time in that same complaint, they'll report some type of negligence. So what we do is we split those two off. So with that one complaint, we'll split it off to an inspection, and we'll split it off to an investigative case.
Second question, if you please. On page 3 of your report, you identified that there were a certain number of cases that went to the Attorney General's office, and then you said there were 6 that went to the district attorney.
Oh, put your butt, you gotta
I'm
keep
sorry, I
pressing
lost
that
my
button.
finger.
Sorry.
Okay,
I
sorry
expect
about
to
that.
receive workers' comp claims from a number
Yeah.
of people for finger paralyzation or something, I don't know.
I have a paralysis of my finger here. Anyway, how do you determine which goes to the Attorney General and which goes to the district attorney?
So with those cases, the ones that go to the Attorney General's office is because we're requesting administrative disciplinary action, and the ones that are going to the district attorney's office because we found violations of the penal code. So they're criminal violations, and those criminal violations are the ones that go to the district attorney's office.
Yeah, there's, if you look back at February of 2017 and before, there's some interesting comparisons. For instance, if you look at the cases per consumer service analyst,
What page are you on, Dr. Witcher?
I'm going
so
back to
everybody can find
page
you?
1, just above the table. There's a figure, average caseload per consumer services analyst. In the second quarter, it was 292. If you look at this same time last year, which you don't have, you have to go back and look at the February 2017, that was 249. And if you look, they reference the fact that prior to that, it was 201. So the caseload is increasing, and, you know, the throughput suffers. And then, of course, we were down 3 positions in complaint and compliance this time last year, and those have since been filled. So when you have a third of your unit out, and then, you know, the caseload's going to go up, it's going to affect your numbers. And the same thing with investigative staff. You know, from what I understand, I just asked Carlos because there wasn't a number in the 2017 packet, but he says it's up from 40 to 50 cases per investigator. And so that's going to have an effect. And, you know, I think the point is there's constant challenges keeping this thing, you know, even, and then to try to improve it is even more difficult. So, you know, I thought that was interesting information to kind of track that over time.
And I think your comments are important because you're connecting the dots, and thank you for that. Essentially, you have taken the vacancy report of staff from my executive officer's report and tied it back to the performance measures, which we can do for licensing and enforcement statistics. So if you see the numbers on enforcement go up, look back to see whether we've had staff shortages at the time to be able to say why it's gone up. Whether that's a justification, you know, I guess there's some question about that, but at least we would know why some of this is happening.
Yeah, to go further, you can also tie it to the Attorney General's office report there, and the numbers are a little different, but Carlos offered an explanation, and so would think the numbers would be closer, but anyway, if we know why, then maybe we can get our numbers closer to theirs.
And I just wanted to respond to Ms. Medina's question about breaking out what the accusations are on Chart 2. Then if you look at that, it shows the investigations. It'll say accusation about in the middle of the page, of page 5, Chart 2. It talks about administrative actions broken out by accusation, statement of issues, petition to revoke. So that's where we give more detailed information.
And ask a question. So when you're looking at, like, for instance, the Attorney General's office, they, is that the 143? Is that similar to what their numbers? Do we have, when we do our reports, our numbers match with their numbers, and then we add the extra ones, you know, for instance, those extra accusations or actions items?
Yeah, like I said, our numbers are down because they're only, what they count are the accusations. And so we're counting everything, like I said. So the statement of issues, petition for reinstatement, we're counting all that as what we're sending to the Attorney General's office. And they're only counting the accusations.
So my question is that, do we have a line item, is there a line item, maybe I'm not seeing it, that pertains to only their numbers, and that way we can see, well, see, it does match with that particular line item, and then looking at, well, these are the other ones, that's why it's a lot higher for us, because then we've had it included. So I'm just,
I don't know how to explain this other than to say, to look at numbers within a state bureaucracy is difficult because it's a point in time where the numbers were actually taken. And so I know that we've had this difficulty when we've had people ask for Public Records Act requests, where they're trying to see numbers appear that would somehow justify, you know, we have the same numbers as the Attorney General's office or others, and sometimes you don't get there. We would hope to be close. And do you have any further comments on that, Carlos?
No, that you're correct. Correct that our numbers are going to be off. Not unless we get with the Attorney General's office and we start doing the same type of reporting statistics, then it will match. But like I said, but ours are just different. But it's something that we have to get together with the Attorney General's office in order to match everything.
Yeah, I think if I could comment again, I think you have to take into account the Breeze system too, where some of our numbers have taken some massaging.
Well, to follow up on that comment, it is frightening for us to be going into sunset review when we're not really sure that the numbers coming out of Breeze are reflective. And so you hear this in a number of our units, we're doing manual counts, which defeats the purpose of having an electronic system, but we need to feel more comfortable that the manual counts now that we're doing somehow correlate to Breeze. So we're on that, and we're going to try to keep as close a look at it as we can.
Carlos, I think that it's fair to say that the majority of our colleagues are honest and they try hard, and it's a very difficult profession at times because of all the factors that have to come into play when you're dealing with patients and your hands and your materials and all the rest of it. I have been aware of some situations in my practice where typically it's a young person will leave my practice, go to a different town, and I'll get a call from a parent saying that the child was just diagnosed with 12, 15 cavities, and they're wondering how something like that could happen. So I've had them come back into my practice, and when I look at their mouth, there's no decay. And when I ask for a copy of their x-rays, there's no decay on the x-rays. And that leads me to believe that there's a small number of people out there that are willing to take use that trust that we've established as in our profession and abuse it. And I guess my question to you is, how does your staff look at that sort of an issue? Would that fit under, I'm looking under these allegations, would that fit under fraud, or where would something like that fit? And how would you view the seriousness of that situation?
And just to address, so part of it was last year I went to UCLA to speak with their fourth-year students. And I kind of broke it down is like I gave them the top 3 allegations that will give them in trouble. And one of the things that came up was billing fraud. One of the things I said is everybody wants to be successful. That's natural. Everybody wants to be successful. But once you start cheating and you get away with it one time, say, well, I'll change this billing here, and they get away with it, and they start doing more and more and more. And so one of the things is I addressed was that's what's going to get you in trouble. That's where you're going to come and face the dental board. You're going to go to the Attorney General's office. I said all that money that you spent for the education, it's all going to go down the drain. Is it worth it? It's not worth it. And that's one of the things I address it that way. The other things I address with it is they have mentors when they went to school. Go talk to one of your mentors. Go talk to an experienced licensed dentist. Go talk to them. If there's an issue, again, with quality of care or anything, you have an issue with billing, go talk to somebody who has experience in it to avoid that, to avoid all these things. So when it comes down to it is, like I said, everybody here is free to file a complaint. You don't necessarily have to put your name on it. You can do it anonymously and put everything that's occurring, everything that you noticed in it. So therefore, we can go and investigate it. So when they come to your office and you see something like that, like I said, everybody's feel free to go ahead and file a complaint anonymously, and we could go ahead and investigate it. But it'll come down to billing fraud, and that's what it'll come down to. And usually with billing fraud, that takes a lot of time because we're talking about getting all the billings from the insurance company, getting all the patient records, identifying all the patients, finding out if, what type of treatment did you go into, what type of treatment did you leave. And so that's how we address it. And like I said, so if they're placed on probation, what do? Remedial education, billing. That's part of it. Remedial education, billing, and ethics. As when we sit here, we put somebody on probation, ethics, billing monitors, and that's how we address it.
I think there's 2 issues, Dr. Stewart, to answer your question too. There's the billing part, but then there's the excessive treatment part. And billing fraud, I believe, is difficult to prove because the first thing the dentist is going to say, I had no idea my assistant was billing for that. And unless you have the assistant saying, the dentist knew what I was doing and okayed it, which you rarely get, it's very difficult. Now, we have fraud cases that are good, they're solid, they go forward, and we're successful. But for these billing types of errors, it's a little harder, and we need to go in with clear and convincing evidence, and it's hard to get that. With regard to the excessive treatment part, which I think is different than the billing, yeah, we move forward on that. Whether or not that's considered fraud, I don't know that we've really addressed it that way. So that's something that staff is going to take a look at and see. I mean, we typically go after it as excessive treatment, but I don't know that we go to the next step as to be fraudulent.
So when we prepare those type of cases, we always go to the district attorney's office and we present the case, and we sit down with them and say, this is the investigation, this is what it revealed, and they'll make the determination that, yes, it falls within their parameters to charge that violation of fraud. So we sit down with them, and so if we don't get that, then that's when we go straight to the Attorney General's office. So a lot of times it goes both ways. So one case can go to the District Attorney's office, and it could also go to the Attorney General's office as well. Sorry, forgetting about my finger. So we don't have any performance measures to report this quarter. DCA is going to combine quarter one and quarter two, and those were supposed to come out in January, but they had some staffing issues. So what I was told is they'll be available March of 2018. So hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have some numbers to report. So item number 16C, it's regarding update regarding utilization of correct prescription pads. So back in November of 2017, the pharmacy board contacted us, the dental board, and so what they were reporting was that some dentists were using old prescription pads. And so there was new prescription pads that went into effect, and it's under the Health and Safety Code 11162.1. And what that safety codes is those prescription pads, the new ones, contain 14 elements that must appear on the California prescription pads for security reasons. So some of those is the prescriptions that were, the old prescriptions that were going to the pharmacy boat, they didn't have a quantity box, like how much quantities they were referring to or requesting. They also didn't have if it was a refill. They didn't have, so some of those items were missing. And with these new prescription pads is if you scan them or you make a copy of it, it'll automatically appear to void it. So those are the new security features that it has. And so therefore what we did is they started sending us over the prescription pads for some of these dentists. And so what we were doing is we were contacting them directly and advising them that there's new prescription pads to be used. We gave them the health and safety code, and we also gave them the link to the pharmacy board and gave them their information, so in order for them to correct that. So what we did in turn with Karen's assistance, we did an alert on our website. So that alert was to put it out there for all licensed dentists to be aware that of this health and safety code, and that everybody has to be up to date with these new prescription pads. And we put that link as well in our tabs for our prescription drug abuse. So we put that link under there. And also, in order to get these new prescription pads, printers have to be registered with the Department of Justice. So we sent that link as well. We provided links as well where a licensed physician could go in there, look at that link to find out who can print these prescription pads. And so that's what we did in our part in order to put that alert, and that way physicians are aware of it, and so they could get up to date with it. So not necessarily at this time were we doing any type of administrative violations or anything like that. We're contacting them directly.
This came up because the executive officer of the pharmacy board gave me a call, and the law or the requirement for the secure prescription pads goes back to, I think, 2012. But what's changed recently is the pharmacy board is coming down on pharmacists essentially who fill the prescriptions from, unsecured forms. So she is sending essentially all the information to us, and as Carlos said, our enforcement staff is contacting the individual licensees just to let them know. I mean, I'm sure they received pads and just keep using them, not realizing perhaps that they changed. There is legislation before you that I'll talk about in a later item that's actually going to, the pharmacy board would like people to go to electronic script as opposed to handwritten paper script, and they're going to nudge people into this area by only actually having 3 secure printers within the state for people to get their prescription pads, so making it probably a little more difficult to get paper. And like I said, I'll report on that further. But we haven't received a lot of licensees who are out of compliance, but we're taking it as just sort of informational in order to get the word out to them and to let them know that they're using the wrong pads. Now, if their name comes back around, we'll see what else we need to do. But the pharmacies are essentially turning these forms away and are not filling them.
What's happening also is that a lot of the dentists are using electronic dental record systems that are not up to date. So the printed prescriptions that come out of these electronic dental records still have the refills and with the numbers where they can circle. So they're using the correct prescription forms printed by the authorized printing companies with the boxes on the side, but because of the fact that the refills with numbers to be circled is still there, and the pharmacies are refusing to fill because of that being there. So I know that I've contacted, some electronic dental records companies to ask them to make that change. It will take some time because, the programmers will have to go in and make that change, and anything that has to do with electronic will take time. So anyway, so that's also another issue that's happening to the California dentists that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and it'll take some time because, like I said, they're communicating. Then they have to communicate that to the Department of Justice as well. So, like you said, so if you see that there is some timeline there, it's because, like I said, everybody has to be on the same page, even Department of Justice as well. Again, the finger. Okay, so we'll move into 17A, that's diversion. And
Carlos,
so,
let me interrupt just for a second, please. Is there any public comment on, regarding 16?
Dr. Guy Atchison speaking as a private practitioner. So there's one more twist to the prescription pads. In my practice, we purchased from licensed, approved printers, and just what you were explaining with the number of refills was to circle, the printer didn't have the check boxes, so we were complying as a practitioner with everything. What was really inconvenient is the pharmacist all of a sudden just declining to fill all these, so it took 4 weeks for our printer to supply us with free replacements, but that was really difficult with patient care. So there's a lot of twists to this. Thank you.
so we have our diversion next, and as you can see, it pretty much hasn't really changed from the last quarter. So currently, right now, active participants, we have 13. And so for the month of December, 2 cases were closed. So we're staying steady at that, 14, 15, 13 mark there. So for the next, the board is currently recruiting a public member position for the northern deck and 2 dental positions on the southern deck. 1 physician, 1 psychologist position in the southern deck, and dental auxiliary positions, both northern and southern decks. So for the next deck meeting, that is scheduled for April 5th of 2018 here in Northern California. I apologize.
This side, the diversion program is definitely going to be something that the board will need to review during sunset review. The participation has really dropped off in the years. At one point, I think the board may have had 85 people in the diversion program, and it's really dropped. Now, Maximus, who's our program administrator, has seen a drop among all boards, and that's very troubling, unless, of course, the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction is we're seeing fewer people with that disease. I don't think that's the case. I think that for whatever reason, people aren't going into our program, perhaps because of this Uniform Standards number 4, and that's the number of times you need to be tested and the cost of that. That could be a contributing factor. But we really don't know what the drop-off is, but this is an all-time low for a number of participants in the dental's diversion program.
This may be something for a future agenda or even sunset review, but with the new marijuana laws, we have multiple layers of complexity, not only with diversion, impairment. There's a lot of other complexities that would come into play for a practicing dentist.
Public comment?
Hello. Oh, just kidding. My name's Heidi Kogan, and I'm representing myself right now. I just had a question about your last comment. So it's no compliance, right? I mean, like, we're not, what's the difference with it being legal for the public? As a medical practitioner, we're not supposed to be doing it, period. So what would change?
Well, one of the things what would change is when it's unprofessional conduct for them to be practicing while they're under the influence. So it would be, like I said, so currently right now, yes, they can do it, but they cannot do it while they're practicing.
I was under the assumption that they couldn't do it anyway.
Well, if they're seeing their physician and they can do it, then yes, but not while they're practicing. So we'll move on to 17B, and it's regarding our cures registration. So our registration numbers have gone up, but just a bit, and not at the number that we wanted at. So currently, from January 20th of 18, we had 8,370 registered dentists that registered for cures. So it kind of went up about 300 or so, but like I said, not at the pace that we wanted at. So 3,270 dentists have created patient activity reports on cures. And so what the good news is about that, it did increase from the last quarter, so it increased by 2,103. So that's the good news, that more dentists are actually going in and creating patient activity reports. And again, it's not at the pace that we wanted. So one of the things that also we did was to address it, again, with Karen's assistance, is we did an alert. And so we put an alert back on to our website, again, to inform all the licensed dentists about registering with cures. So that's one of the things that we did, was send out the alert in order to get it out there to everybody. And the other things that we did with our cures pamphlets, because we have cures pamphlets now. So part of our protocol now is when we have investigative cases, so when we go into these offices to investigate, one of the things that we're asking, are you registered with cures? So that's how we're addressing it. And also with our complaint compliance unit, we also have these pamphlets. So when they're sending out the request for records for the substituting dentists, the subjects, we're sending out these pamphlets as well. And like I said, so in order to improve our numbers, so we're staying proactive in order to improve these numbers here with cures.
I'm just going to jump into this too and say that there's legislation that's been introduced this year in January of 2018 that we will be following. AB 1751 by Low 1752 and 1753. 1751 essentially is going to try to get some interstate agreement going between Cures systems and other states. Sharing of the data, I think that this would be critical. So they're looking into, prescription drug monitoring programs across state lines. That'll be AB 1751. AB 1752 is looking to include Schedule 5 as a controlled substance, adding that to the database, the Cures database. And then, I'm not sure what Schedule 5 covers in terms of controlled substance, what it is. And then, as I mentioned previously, AB 1753 is going to address the number of printers, the number of secure printers that will be able to print the secure prescription forms. They're hoping that making it a little more difficult to get it in writing, people will move to the e-prescriptions. So the board will be following up on those pieces of legislation as it relates to the Cures program. Also, we'll be watching SB 641 regarding who can access the Cures database. Right now, the legislation says that a warrant is necessary for law enforcement to be able to access it. Now, we have sworn, our peace officers are sworn, but we go at it from the administrative level, so we will not have a restriction in order to be able to access the data for complaint-related issues. And are there any questions?
And so just continue on. So Dr. Stewart had requested to look into other states regarding prescription drug abuse. And so I reached out to the state of Pennsylvania and to see what they were doing. And so from August 25th of 2016, they also launched a new prescription drug monitoring program, just like Cures. So, their system is the same as ours, where go and monitor a patient's activity to see what kind of prescriptions they've been prescribed, red flags for them to identify any red flags. But with their system, they have 17 states that share information that can actually look into this. So opposed to California, it's just California. They have 17 states that actually share the same information, and they're able to view patient activity. So if one crosses state lines that's in the same system, they're able to view it. So what we call it, patient shopping or doctor shopping, when they're going around trying to get prescriptions, they could go in that state and look at their history. And another thing that came out for Pennsylvania as well, and this started July 1st of 2017. So is there for their applicants and their renewals now. So what they require is CEs now. When they're applying, they at least need 4 hours of board-approved education consisting of 2 hours in pain management or the identification of addiction and 2 hours in practice of prescribing or dispensing opioids. So now part of their new applicants, renewals, they require these CEs now.
I have a question.
Yes, Abigail?
Okay. Was there a reason Pennsylvania was chosen? Was there background or reasons why particularly that one state was chosen compared to other states?
I can answer that. It was only because they have a very high opioid rate, and so they're one of the states that I think is being more proactive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're one of the few states that actually publish their own guidelines for prescribing. Like Dr. Stewart said, they've been very active, much more so than most other states.
More questions of Carlos? Public comment?
And
I
thank you.
I have one comment. I don't know if it's the place to. I just recently heard that certain pharmacies and certain these big box pharmacy stores are now dispensing packets that basically are dispensed with opioids. And so when they're finished with those prescriptions, they put them in that packet plus the opioids with water and makes it harmless. So that's new that they're doing right now.
Felsenfeld.
Alan Felsenfeld, CDA. The California Dental Association is well aware of the opioid problems and is extremely vigilant about trying to let our 27,000 members, you have about 7,000 that are not members, we continue to present at CDA Presents information on opioid prescriptions. We continue to have notices about cures in our updates, and we hope that that will help some of our members get onto the system, not only for the legality of it, that's one thing, but obviously for good patient care and prevention of all the problems we have with opioids. So we're supportive and willing to continue to work with you in that area.
Dr. Felsenfeld, do you know when that opioid training is going to be at CDA in May?
Maybe Mary does. I don't. We are planning something of that nature. Hold on.
It's going to be the Saturday of CDA Presents in Anaheim.
When I get more information, I'll go ahead and pass that out to the board.
I don't know if it's the right place to do this, but can we request that CDA have in its publications about the new requirements or the requirements about the prescriptions?
And we may or may not have this, but do we? You know, we talk a lot about the opioids. As far as the state of California, do we have any policies that are in place to prevent some of these opioid, in terms of the opioid dispensaries, some of these fake pharmacies that are coming up? Because it really begins with lobbyists coming in and also allowing a lot of these pharmacies to go unchecked. So in the state of California, do we have any policies? I know other states may be running rampant like Ohio, but the state of California, what do we have in place?
Well, what I could come up with is they're governed and regulated by the pharmacy board, so there has to be some policies in place. But also, if they're dispensing, also DEA will get involved as well. So I imagine that they have some type of policy and regulations as well, and California penal codes or health and safety codes violations that they actually go in and investigate these pharmacies.
So just to follow up, that was, I found that on AARP under Health, Drugs, and Supplements, and helps turn leftover opioids into useless gel. So if anybody wants to read up on that, and certain pharmacies are taking back all these unused. And
Thank you, Carlos. I believe we're on 18, Sarah?
So general anesthesia and conscious sedation evaluation statistics, agenda item 18A. Board staff has provided the statistical overview of the on-site inspection and evaluations that have been administered by the board for the general anesthesia permits on page 1 of the memo included in your packet. Also for the conscious sedation evaluation permits that are on page 2, and the medical general anesthesia evaluations that are on page 3. You'll notice in the packet that January and February of 2018 include statistics. Those are the anticipated evaluations that have been scheduled or have been postponed or canceled by request by those permit holders. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Of course, Jessica Olney is doing a wonderful job with this program, and as always, we can always use additional evaluators.
Thank you, Sarah. Comments? Dr. Witcher?
Yeah, as most of you know, I track this, and the number of evaluations year over year is up for general anesthesia from 195 to 214. Conscious sedation is up slightly. Medical general anesthesia permit holders remain pretty behind. Their numbers are flat where of licensees and evaluations. We only did one last year. The number of evaluators continues to decline. So somehow we're doing more with less, and where those two curves will intersect, you know, where the lack of evaluators will really start to affect the number of evaluations, I couldn't say. Right now, our number of evaluations postponed due to lack of evaluators is actually down. And so the whole thing is going along pretty well. Just to back up a little bit, I think you're all aware, because I've talked about this before, the evaluation basically has three parts: facilities and equipment, and drug inspection, a case demonstration, and then the simulated emergencies. And the program is kind of unique in that they look at all aspects of sedation and anesthesia administered, including the team members, the staff members. The accreditation programs don't go into that kind of depth in their evaluation of anesthesia and rely more on the anesthesiologist who's anesthesia services director for that facility. So it's an interesting program, has a lot of unique features. Its success is based on volunteer participation. They're compensated a small amount for travel and expenses, which was new in the last few years. But basically, it's voluntary, and the program could not exist without that.
Public comment?
Alan Felsfeld, speaking as an individual and as a general anesthesia / moderate sedation evaluator. A number of meetings ago, and this is just a question, a number of meetings ago there was some discussion about the possibility of going from 2 to 1. Do we have anything going on that? Is that something that could be looked at that might make the setting up of the evaluations a little easier if you don't have to coordinate 2 people?
Yeah, that was an item that I brought up based on conversation I had with Jessica, things that we could do. The idea was you could use 1 evaluator instead of 2 for a repeat evaluation, not for a failure, not for an initial. You know, I recommended a number of improvements as part of the subcommittee report on anesthesia to the evaluation program to enhance it. Those have not been picked up by any of the legislation.
Is that something we should put on the agenda for Sunset Review?
I've asked about it before.
Public comment? Going to item 19. Dr. Lai.
Okay, I'm gonna use my thumb to, I think it'd be easier. Now I got this. Good morning. I'll talk a little slower. Yesterday in our closed session meeting, we discussed and vetted the following applicants for consideration of issuance of a new license to replace canceled ones. I'm good. Okay. For the license, no, it's too close. For the license for Dr. Dental Surgery, DDST, or DMD, in the state of California, dentist KH, KC, GM, MT have completed applications, and committee recommends all candidates be allowed issuance with the condition of successfully passing California law, dentistry law, and ethics. For applicants seeking the replacement of their license for registered dental assistant, RDA, the following applicants have been considered and vetted. Committee approves as follows. Applicant PA, law and ethics only. Applicants LG, IH, PP, GSDS must successfully pass RDA written and law and ethics. Applicant RB was not eligible at this time because of an incomplete application. Mr. President, members, I respectfully ask to approve our meeting. Thanks, Yvette.
That takes a vote, right? Okay, do I have a motion to accept? A second? Dr. Chan, a second? Think we can call the roll?
Okay, calling the roll.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Yvette. Once again, public comment? Okay.
Okay. Calling the roll on LCP. Burton is out. Chan? Chappelle Ingram, yes. Lai? Yes. Lay? Medina's out. I'm sorry, McKenzie's out. Medina? Yes. Morrow? Yes. Stewart? Yes. Witcher? Yes. Mr. President, motion passes.
Number 20, any public comments or items not on the agenda?
So my name is Heidi Kogan, and I'm representing CDHA, and we would just like to extend our thanks for you working on the language for the mobile units and the dental portable units. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And item 21, board member comments and on items not on the agenda. Dr. Chan.
I'd like to request that staff look at, or on the agenda for a future agenda, staff look at the impact of the new marijuana laws as it might impact us on the board.
Are you giving us about 5 or 10 years to draw the data?
The trend analysis would be good.
In about 20 years? Can we use Colorado statistics?
Further comments?
I'd like to put on a future agenda item, mail order or online orthodontia. That seems to be popular now, as well as storefront orthodontia.
Further comments?
I would like to add one.
I think Karen mentioned earlier, so I don't know if I need to mention again or not, but portfolio examination administered out of state at out-of-state schools.
Thank you.
And I would like to get more information on the loan repayment program and the details of how a person can apply for it.
Thank you.
And just piggybacking on what Medina said, I'd like to find out if in fact this could be a role for Access to Care Committee. Yes. Loan repayment has to do with lower income.
Absolutely. Further comment?
Of course, Dr. Stewart closes the meeting. I just want to remind board members, this is going to be a really busy year. We're going to try to get the information, the board meeting materials out to you early enough. The Office of Administrating Hearing pretty much closes down in March and April and takes school information, so we shouldn't have a lot of things coming from, any proposed decisions coming during that period of time. So hopefully your votes or the decisions that you need to review and vote on won't be really big between now and May. But just remind you, too, that the meeting is going to be Wednesday and Thursday. So to allow those who want to attend CDA to be able to piggyback on top of the meeting. And we already have 2 board members that probably will not be there on the first day. So it's down, we will be at 8 on the first day unless we get additional appointees. Okay, so it's critical that you go home and take vitamin C and wash your hands and decline any parties where people are coughing and sneezing, and I'm sure you will do that diligently. So, thank you.
So I think our business is concluded. I just want to thank everyone for their engagement and their participation in this meeting. Travel safely, and we'll see you soon. Be well.